I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Grande, the production designer for Call Me Kat, which will be debuting its second season on Fox this fall. And Greg, you've done quite a lot of multi-camera sitcoms, which I think is one of those art forms that doesn't always necessarily get the respect that it deserves. Is there a unique challenge to designing a multicam as opposed to, say, a single camera uh, series?
There actually, I attributed a lot of it to theater. Obviously, in most scenarios, we have a live audience that we're open to, if you will. So it's a three-wall set that does not have complete 360 degrees around it, which is the difference between multicam and single cam. And the idea is to kind of create the space so that it's got a little bit of a forced perspective, if you will, only because you're trying to squeeze in as much information into those three walls as you can. Obviously, you want it to look as believable and real as you can, but in certain aspects, foreground elements that the camera would kind of flow through sometimes helps create that world that you wouldn't necessarily see unless you had a four-wall set. So there is a lot of challenges. A lot of people say, well, what do you do once the permanent sets are up? And 9 times out of 10, my questions or my answers are that in every single episode, we usually have 3 to 4 swing sets. And to create these swing sets, you get about 2 days to turn them around. So it's a quick turnaround to create a world that, needs to look like it's believable. So that's the challenge, I guess, every day for us.
So with Call Me Kat, this show has as its kind of central set this cat cafe, which is combination cafe, bakery, pet store, kind of gathering area. So I have to imagine that when you see this setup, when you see the setup, oh, this is going to take place in a cat cafe. Where do you even begin as a designer?
Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Well, honestly, I have to be completely honest and say I was a little bit floored when I did my deep dive into research to find. Obviously, the Asian countries have more of these than we do, but there are quite a few cat cafes across the country and the world, really, believe it or not. And they're quite popular. I never would have imagined that food and cats in the same space would go hand in hand, but and they're quite interesting. The architecture and some of the creative uh, freedom that these spaces have created is amazing. So that was my first dive into figuring out how I could best emulate this space and make it look interesting. So the idea was that I was going to take this space and have it be an upstairs downstairs space. So in our particular set, she lives above the cat cafe. The idea was to have it multi-purpose, so there was a little seating area a la. I tried to fashion it a little bit like a coffee house, if you will. So you could have a seating area. You could go get your coffee and your muffin. The cats could roam around. We created a tree in the middle of the set upstage with a back patio. And then, of course, there was an area where you could buy your, pet food and a hat or any kind of merchandise that you'd like that was also fun creating for the show. And, obviously a staircase that is prominent in the set that leads up to her apartment above us, which is also another permanent set on the stage. And, colorful, intimate, colorful, bright, light, and airy. So I had a bank of windows upstage with that back patio, and we actually did a custom backdrop. So the idea was to have room to kind of block scenes, whether it be at the coffee area, at the seating area, and or at the merchandise area with an entrance in and out of the space. And then also see her able to come up and down the stairs from her apartment. And then our other big permanent set is the bar. So we have 3 permanent sets: her upstairs space, the cat cafe, and then the bar. And then everything else we kind of create per episode, whether it be a hotel ballroom or a variety of different sets, the pet store. So that's kind of how our stage is laid out. Like I say, we end up using those 3 sets almost every episode, and then we create 4 or 5, sometimes more, rooftop area for particular episodes.
And I think there's almost sometimes a misconception about production design that it's just the space, but there's also the things in the space that have to reflect the story and the character. And of course, in this series, Kat, played by Mayim Bialik, is a very unique individual and full of quirks and personality. So how did you and Mayim work together in terms of what her spaces were going to look like?
Well, the first thing we do is we sit down and we talk about. I pitch the set to them and her luckily it was in person, so the first time, and then we kind of transitioned into Zoom calls. But she was particular about how she wanted it to feel, so that it was kind of an interesting space and bright and airy, and had places to move to and places for her to do her business. In the first rendition of the set, I didn't have the back kitchen for the coffee area, so we had to add that while we were building the sets, just to give them a place to come and go from. Of course, Leslie is working in there, and it gave them action to come in and out of spaces, so they're not locked into the set. But again, it's about giving them the freedom to come and move about, so that there is not stagnant areas in the set, which is the other reason why we call this our main set. So it's usually our biggest set. But then something else that is important to note is that when we're designing sets for multicam, it's always important to know that from the entrance door to wherever the furthest point to the set is, whether in this case it's the coffee area, the bar area, you don't want it to be too far away, or else you'll have a lot of dead time in foot traffic, if you will. So they need the lines to be able to get to that point. So it's about 30-35 feet is the sweet spot, the widest spot. So and just knowing, having done this long enough, knowing where we could create that egress of traffic flow, and helping the DP be able to light it so it looks believable. So it's a fun set. It's certainly something different and unique. I've never. That's always the great thing, is when you're up for a pilot or a series, it's not the same old thing, right? You get to design something that is a little bit more unique. In this case, it's great that we were able to do that. We created this cat tree where the cats hang out, and it just feels like I tried to make it as different and quirky as we possibly could. Custom wallpaper and all that fun stuff that you see.
In talking to other production designers, they always say that there's a piece on the set, whether it's a book or a sculpture or a piece of artwork, that they clue in on, that's like their favorite piece, whether we at home recognize it or not. Do you have like a favorite aspect of the set?
Well, there's a couple of pieces in there. Obviously, we custom made everything. So, it's really about the passion you put into custom making how the bar is situated or how the back bar is going to be situated. Obviously, for this particular set, the wallpaper was fun because we got to do custom wallpaper, and then a couple of things happened while we were designing this set. We had a conversation about the cat wrangler, and the cats were going to escape once somebody came through the front door. So we kind of had to create this. I like to call it a mud room, so that they could be within the entrance of the entrance, so that the cats didn't escape when the cast and background came in and out. So that little foyer up there, we created this kind of intimate little space. They've used it a couple of times, but it's a nice little intimate space that I did a little research based on where we were in Louisville, and it's an old building. It's supposed to be an old building, so that was kind of fun to create for us, that you don't often see in a multicam set.
You're clearly a student of this particular genre. Are there famous sets on multicams that you like, that you look at, that are like inspirations for you, or ones that you particularly admire?
Well, I honestly, I will say to you that there's the Dick Van Dyke Show was always one that I loved. I'm not sure that I would say inspiration, but it certainly embarked me upon this career in television. I was in love with that, as well as Mary Tyler Moore Show. I thought that set was inspirational. Um, so for me, those two are old school standouts as I was a child watching, those particular shows. Um, I have in the past tried to fashion some of an interesting small little apartment after the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but in looking at the research from that show, it's a tiny, tiny little set,
Mhm.
and the beauty of it is how they shot it. But obviously, it's every set you do, you kind of pull from some multicam set because they work so well. Cheers was amazing. um, with this particular project, we had done a pilot last year that didn't happen. The pilot happened, but the show didn't get picked up, and it was about a bunch of women who worked in an auto body shop. It was called Patty's Auto, and it was a beautiful set. And I kind of took a little bit of research from Taxi
Mm.
to kind of make that feel like it. So yeah, you're always picking and pulling from things that worked well, and that you could kind of reinvent, if you will.
In looking at your the work that you've done over the course of your career, it's so varied in terms of the types of shows that you've done. You've done everything from multicams to things like, Dear White People, and and shows, and Mixed Dish and things like that. So what draws you to a particular project?
Well, for me, it's about trying to be as creative and collaborative as possible with the producers I work with. So, I do both only because there is some sense of staying creatively sharp when you're designing sets. Don't get me wrong, there's many designers who do just multicam, and they do it really well. But I do like the aspect of creating an entirety uh, of architecture, meaning I'll give you a full kitchen and a full four-wall set that is a complete build out. And the idea of being able to go on location scouts and look at particular locations and create that space. So for me, it's a good balance to be able to do a single cam and a multicam. And I've been able to balance both of those very nicely and give it, keep my skills sharp in giving the reality of what both genres have to offer.
Well, we definitely look forward to the second season of Call Me Kat, which will air this fall. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews with Emmy contenders throughout the season. Greg Grande, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.